The explanation I've heard is that it turns out we were watching Universe 1 when there is in fact a Universe 0, which was the actual original MCU timeline, where Cap did all of this and then traveled to Universe 1 and sat on the bench, because and he was secretly married to Peggy Carter, and he...
Fuck it.
Weird line from Ancient One. She says something along the lines of, like, when you knock out a stone, she picks out the time stone specifically, but she says a stone, then you create a darker timeline, as if to imply you don't get a new timeline unless you do something with stones specifically. And a lot of people have taken that as word of God sort of thing to do with the script. I don't think you could say that's true, because what if I went back and killed Tony Stark? I didn't touch any stones, I just killed Tony Stark. Wouldn't that have to change the timeline, and thus create a new timeline? Like, or would it erase Timeline 1, because he's no longer alive to be in the end of Timeline 1, so that none of that can even happen anymore?
Why do they even need all of the Infinity Stones when they can just, once they get the Time Stone, like, what are the Time Stone's powers exactly?
That's one of the issues I have, is they never actually use any of the powers of any individual stone in the movie.
Yeah, like, you have the Time Stone that controls time.
Oh, do you mean, like,
golden now.
They should just fly out to outside of Earth with the Time Stone and then just rewind the thing by 5 years?
Well, what's the freaking rules of the Time Stone?
No idea. It's part
Because
of what broke Doctor Strange.
Because to me, I'd be like, we have to do time travel. It's like, all right, well, let's go get the Time Stone. That's the one that matters. And the rest, well, we have the Time Stone, so we have like an infinite, just like in Doctor Strange, we have an infinite amount of attempts to get them. Which means if it's even possible that we can get them, then it's inevitable that we'll get them. Time Stone.
Not just that, but I don't know about you guys, but if you were with the Avengers and you're like, all right, we need all 6 stones, where were they at what times, what are the easiest ways to sort of grab them? I would have been like, ooh, I know one. If I was Iron Man, I'd be like, there was this purple dude who had, like, this gauntlet with most of them in it already. If we go back to when you guys subdued him and literally just fucking knock out Peter Quill, we can get the gauntlet off him and tell the Avengers, well, we could just kill him there and then, because he was knocked out by Thingy, so we can literally chop off his head with Thor, because we know that's possible. Done and done. That universe doesn't even have a Thanos now, and then we'd be like, hey, universe, we just saved your ass, hardcore. Do you mind if we take the other stones, and we'll come right back, but we need to save our universe too?
We need to save him. Yeah, that would have been...
Time
travel!
That would have ruined the film, so can't do that. Also, oh damn, we can't do much time traveling. We're restricted because we have such limited Pym particles. Like, oh, well, I guess they can't get any more. Oh no, they can, they just need to travel back in time. It's like, why didn't you do that first?
Also, how come he only grabbed, like, 4 of them instead of all of them?
Yeah, that was weird.
I was like, no, all of them. They're all extremely valuable. Get all of them.
Fucking Hank Pym can make more. Just take them all.
Yes. It's like, we need these.
Well, he could literally put them in his thing and go back just before Cap entered that room, and then they'll all be there again, and grab them all, and see that other Cap and be like, fuck you. Just leave again.
Well, that's the thing. It's the whole, well,
you
we
get
can have
infinite
anything
Pym particles.
Yeah, you just keep going back 5 minutes before you grabbed them the first time.
And that makes it so
now you're making things really awkward for a bunch of other timelines in which you did this, but...
Yeah, which is another issue, is do they care about the repercussions in the other timelines? How did Cap fix what they did with Loki? I'm assuming he didn't. How did Cap... You know what? They took the spear, the staff, whatever it is, the Loki spear. They took the stone out of that. Did they put it back in before they replaced it? Because Age of Ultron is a very different movie if you don't even have that scepter as it is.
Mm-hmm.
No mind controlling as well for Age of Ultron, which happens to be girl, the Doctor girl. She allows Ultron to do everything she needs her to do. So, like, yeah, again, like, this is like, uh-oh.
Time travel is really weird.
And
this is why it's messy. There's no it's the big thing. It should not be treated lightly.
And the overall, there's a few more. So, like, why did they choose... Do you guys remember Guardians of the Galaxy? So, Quill gets the, Power Stone, and he's, like, immediately ambushed by Ronan's men. Where were they in this movie? They don't turn up.
They don't.
I
Maybe...
was like,
Well, I guess compared to when they punch him...
Well, if you remember, what's her name? Gamora, Nebula got knocked out. She was on the floor for a while. There's no way they wouldn't have turned up.
Well,
Speaking of Nebula, how is it that she can be connected to the other Nebula from the other timeline?
Oh, it's explained in Guardians. It's called convenience.
I don't know. I'm okay with that part.
I'm not. I would have been...
I mean...
If not for the fact that she should be fully aware of that, and she jeopardizes the whole mission by going, just let War Machine go without you.
I mean, I could understand, like, her not foreseeing that, but wouldn't she start having the same... Because the past Nebula started having some fuckery going on in her head, but present Nebula didn't.
Well, present Nebula, that's... So you're nearly there. She does eventually. My problem is, why doesn't it happen at the same time?
Well... Isn't it because don't they have the Thanos' machine that reads the memories?
No, it first happens to her when she's just talking to Thanos, remember? And Thanos is like, what the fuck is this? And she displays all that stuff, and it's like, shouldn't our one be like, blah, blah, blah. Also, she has that issue the second after War Machine leaves.
Very, very, very convenient timing.
And
not even really the second after. It's like the second that they're both pressing the button. And about to press the button.
And you might be like, well, yeah, you know, she's just unlucky. And it's like, why doesn't she just... She's like, oh no, Thanos knows. And it's like, okay, so what's the problem? And you'd be like, oh, it's going to change how Thanos behaves in this universe, I guess. Like, okay, that's it. Tough shit. You're going to have to move on, because you need to go back now. Just activate a little thing and go back. Instead, she decides to get herself captured and provide them with a PIM particle. Like, okay. That's interesting. Like, why didn't... You know when she's getting sucked up into the ship? I was like, use your thing. You use the thing. Go back. What are you doing? She just lets herself get captured? I don't know why.
Yeah, that was dumb.
Thor's timeline where he just goes and gets the juice. That worked out just fine, mostly. Because the logic of the film, I'm assuming, I could be getting this wrong, is that if you return the stone, the timeline goes back to normal, as it was always supposed to. Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I'm okay with that, given a certain amount of margin of error. Like, you know, the Tesseract in and out of the box, if no one's there to interact with it, or if nobody's actions are influenced by it, then I could see how the timeline would, quote-unquote, mend itself.
Mm-hmm.
But that's one of those, every situation is kind of its own deal. It's very contextual, whether it would or not. I mean, it depends on how big the change is.
Yeah, like, if there's something we're missing, by the way, time travel-wise, it could very well be the case. Like, are you guys, all three of you, are you following along, or is there anything that you think we've missed here? I thought this is pretty much how they do it in the film.
Yeah, I'm a little confused. So what exactly leads you to believe that there are actually multiple timelines?
Ancient One saying that when you take a stone out, it makes a new timeline, and then they have to go back to that specific timeline and repair it, quote-unquote.
Right, but before, you're also kind of assuming there's multiple timelines before they remove the stones.
Oh, it's as a result of moving the stones that the timelines are made, I'm assuming. So I just put them there ahead of time.
But the whole deal is that they put them back so that there aren't multiple timelines.
Yes, so technically, as far as I'm aware... Well, so this is the other problem. If we go by Ancient One's logic, then you only get a new timeline when you take a stone out. But my question is, what is happening then if Thanos is dead in Timeline 4? So doesn't that change everything? The Timeline 4 to the point where it can't be Timeline 1?
Yeah, it would.
It has to be a new one, right?
Because, like, the first thing that somebody mentions is, let's go back in time and kill baby Thanos.
Right.
and then Banner says
That wouldn't change anything for us. It would for their timeline, though, right?
Yeah.
I mean,
We'd be like,
that sounds logical, but I don't think the movie ever really puts that forward.
Well, I
in
think they
real
don't.
sense.
I think they don't do it because Banner says that it wouldn't change it for us. And depending on how many timelines there were, there's potentially, I guess by the Avengers rules, there's only a timeline for how many stones there could be. Is that what the Ancient One is kind of leading at here?
Also, the
Or
reason
is it just the time stone because she picks that one out specifically?
to clarify for chat, the reason I've drawn it this way is because it's much easier to understand than if I drew a line and then lines going back to them and then splitting off depending on the events that happen. But yeah, these timelines only exist when they fuck them up. As far as I can tell from the movie, they slot back in with timeline 1 if everything goes to plan. But then you have the problem of, well, hey, so moving a stone makes a new timeline. Okay. Killing Tony Stark or Thanos or someone like that, surely that makes two timelines go, okay. What about giving Tony Stark cardiac arrest? That would probably change at least a few things, right? And then you get to the point of, what about opening a door on some street where it wasn't before? You know, the whole butterfly effect idea.
And that's what it's, are there an infinite amount of timelines for every potential change that could ever possibly happen?
Yeah. So,
I have to assume so.
yeah.
Like the infinite timeline thing is one of the it's